The first thing I want to say is kind of my own, not a disclaimer, but I just want to kind of set something up that I personally am not an expert in rock music. I'm not. I mean, I'm sure there's many other people that have been in the music business for years that would know more about rock music. I got into the subject really as a fluke. After I did the punk rock footage, you asked me that one time, and it put the seed in my brain. Have you ever heard that you can play certain rock albums backwards and get different messages? I don't know even if you remember asking me that.
You laughed at that.
Yeah, I go, well, yeah, I've heard about it in junior high, and I had. But I thought it was pretty stupid, what is this, backward masking? But I was just stupid enough to try it, So I was one time at an album store just shopping with my wife, Tawny, and I ran up on Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, and I bought the album and tried it. And I think what I was to discover that night has literally changed my life. And I started getting into rock music, kind of just as a layperson, not as an expert, just kind of, is there a spirituality to rock music is kind of what I was keying on. You can key on all different areas. You can key on the drug part of it where they're promoting drugs, sex, the whole bit, and that really didn't interest me, but the spiritual side of rock music fascinated me, and it was something on the inside. Now, I know Earth, Wind, and Fire, the leader, Maurice White, is heavily into Egyptology and kind of unison religion, where all religions are the same, which is very dangerous. Now, he may not realize it, but it is, and Egyptology itself can be dangerous with some of the gods that they worship.
Occultic, yes.
And but I do know that many members, in fact, I heard that one of them was on the 700 Club the other day. Some of the members of Earth, Wind, and Fire are Christians, born-again Christians. And so I'm sure they're witnessing to Maurice, trying to get him to open up. I hope they are. But on this one album, Earth, Wind, and Fire, that's the inside of it. And what's kind of scary to me is it depicts the unison religion, or one religion is all religions. With some of the close-ups there, you've got Buddhism depicted there. You've got the Ankh cross, which is the cross of Satan, actually. A lot of people mistake that as being, kind of a decorative Christian cross, but it's not. The all-seeing eye they use that over in Arab countries, the all-seeing eye. And let's go on. And there's the Christian cross kind of thrown in as, it's the same as all the others, which, is very dangerous, I feel, and not true. I mean, I think we know that. Let's go on. This one is the Moody Blues, In Search of the Lost Chord. And on the inside there, I want to read you something where, let me get that album real quick. They,
just real quickly before you go on, it's kind of blowing me away. You're saying that some of the Earth, Wind, and Fire musicians profess to be actually born again?
Oh, absolutely.
Christians?
Yeah.
And yet sing that music?
Well, the music itself, is not... I don't know Earth, Wind, and Fire that well. I've heard a couple of their songs, and it's not that bad. They're not... more of what they're into, or the thing that I feel is objectionable, is what they're depicting on some of their covers and stuff. I don't know the music that well, and I don't know what they're trying to say through their music.
Kind of all roads lead to one.
Depict violence, the Satanism and stuff is bad enough, but violence, in its own right, is getting out of hand with the punk rock movement. This is Nazareth, No Mean City. It shows, an obviously very violent man there with the knives, and
they go after biblical names to
kind of a comparison there.
Best to put it down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nazareth. I mean, that's where Jesus was born.
Where he grew up. He was born in Bethlehem and grew up in Nazareth, right?
This is Rush and 2112. I wanted to show that because you'll see a lot of parallels in a lot of albums with the pentagram down at the bottom. In fact, Rush, that is their logo that they use. And let's go on. This is their newest one. This was on the charts for a while. Moving Pictures.
I saw that.
And here's some of the inserts on the album. It shows a lady being burned at the stake there with a Christian cross over her head. And
I wonder what that's supposed to mean.
I don't know. And then again, there's Rush's logo with the pentagram and the man
And the
in the middle.
pentagram is clearly a satanic
Oh,
symbol.
sure. I've got some documentation on that, too. Let's go on. All right, this one of the biggest rock groups of all times, the Rolling Stones. And the name of this album is Goathead Soup. And what's interesting is about the goat is Jesus was called the Lamb of God. And Satanism has to have their equal to that, so they use the goat. And people before Jesus came, they used to sacrifice a lamb as a remission for sin. Well, Satanists also sacrifice goats in some of their rituals, and they use goat's blood a lot. The name of that is Goathead Soup. In fact, there's a song on there. The group, the Rolling Stones, were down in Haiti, and they took some audio recorders with them, and actually audio recorded a voodoo ritual going on, and took the beat of the drums and put it to music and put it on one of their albums, the Rolling Stones, Goathead Soup. In fact, some of their songs, Sympathy for the Devil is one, and Dancing with Mr. D, or some other songs. And there's up in the upper right-hand corner, you can kind of see I outlined it with a pencil, but the kind of the outline of a goat head up in the upper right-hand corner. The nose and mouth and ear up above Mick Jagger's head there. This one was interesting in the fact, somebody sent it to me. Phantom of the Paradise is the name of this one. This is an older one by Paul Williams. Paul Williams was involved in this, and he's written some beautiful songs like Evergreen for Barbra Streisand and such as those. But on the back, they had a thing. It says, an invitation. How exciting these satanic 70s, the magical time when reality and fantasy are so cleverly disguised by the media masters.
Right on the album.
Right on the album in the back there. This one, ELO, we're going to talk about a little later. One scripture in the Bible, it talks about how we should avoid all forms of witchcraft and divination and sorcery such as this. Now, divination comes in many forms. It comes in the form of crystal balls, tea leaf reading, palmistry is all forms of divination. Tarot cards. And you can see there on that ELO album that he was staring into that object there, another form of divination. The name of it is Discovery. And we're going to discover something about ELO a little later, but I'll wait on that. Now this one is incredible. This is the girl that smashes up TVs and cuts cars in half on stage. This is Wendy O. Williams with the Plasmatics. And the name of this is Metal Priestess. And but what's interesting is look at the inverted pentagram behind her. You can see it back behind her. And by the way, the catalog number on this album is WW666 on that particular album. And she was on Tom Snyder a few months ago. I was watching. And right in the middle of her concert, or one of her songs, she took a spray paint can after she'd smashed the car and wrote with a spray paint can across the car, "Fornicate me." And she said the reason she did that is because she can't use the other F word on television. But she does in her concerts. All right, let's go on. This one, she's not real popular now, but she's becoming bigger in England, Lene Lovitch. And there you have another form of divination with the palmistry shown on the top there. And it shows even the symbols and the letters for it and stuff. And that symbol that she had in her hand, I don't know if we can go back to it or not, but a lady came up to me after a service one time and said, "Do you know what that is?" And we'll show it for you in a minute. But it's strings connected to two discs, and you use those. There it is in her right hand there. Those are used just like a Ouija board is used, where you ask it questions and those discs will move around and give you answers to different questions. And again, if you want to go to the close-up of that hand, there you have it. Very graphically portrayed. That's used in palmistry. Let's go on. This one, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors. This is one of the largest selling LPs of all time. But the reason I point this out is because, again, it's a very innocent looking cover, but you've got the crystal ball. He's holding a crystal ball in his left hand, and you have some images in the crystal ball. And also, I don't have the other album, but There's another album with a crystal ball in it also. It's hovering over their heads, but the symbols that you saw in the crystal ball are identical, used by Fleetwood Mac. Now, why? I don't know. Why use a crystal ball? But let's go on. This one, Accept, is just the simple name of it. Another English group. I wonder who they're asking you to accept. Not too hard to tell.
No.
Another one, Lucifer's Friend is the name of the group, and the album Mean Machine. And very blatant as to what they're trying to say, and to what they've got the meat hook coming through the paper there. But the name of the group is Lucifer's Friend. Another one, the Flesh Eaters. A minute to pray, a second to die. I mean, you can find garbage like this anywhere. I mean, anywhere they sell albums, you can find this stuff. They're selling them at, FedMart, Kmart. It's not just these record stores that have stuff like this. And any young kid or whoever, can run up on stuff like that.
These kinds of records have just gradually gotten worse and worse and worse. What, over about the last 5-10 years, haven't they?
Yeah. And, if you'd have had an album like that 10 years ago by the Flesh Eaters, people would have said you're crazy.
Yeah.
But, it's like anything. It gets gradually worse and worse, and they try to outdo the other guy by being grosser. And so that's kind of what you end up with.
And kids are really buying these records.
That's what kind of astonished me. I was back in Oklahoma City speaking, and I go, well, nobody's going to have albums by the Scorpions. They've got a song or an album called The Virgin Killers, and just garbage like this. I go, nobody's going to buy that stuff. But I was speaking at a church in Oklahoma City, no less, and a kid about 12 years old came up and handed me every Kiss album, the Scorpions, every Scorpion album, and some of this stuff that was just really trash. I mean,
how old was he?
12 years old.
12 years old.
And his parents didn't even know about it, and they're Christians. And in Oklahoma City is what astounded me, because
the buckle of the Bible belt.
And so it's sad. Let's go on. This is Journey, now a very popular group. But again, there may be nothing particularly wrong with their music, but you've got the crystal ball in the middle. And they've got another album, Journey, and the name of this is Look Into the Future. And you've got the crystal ball, again in the middle. Why? Now, the Lord says we should avoid all forms of this, but it's graphically portrayed in a lot of different albums. Let's go on. Here's that one I was talking about earlier, the Scorpions. Virgin Killer is the name of this. And one thing I found out, that a lot of album covers are banned in this country. And
What?
Well, they're censored.
They're worse than this?
Oh, yes. The cover for that, in fact, some of the albums come in as imports. They're more expensive. Or some of them are pressed here. And the ones that are pressed here are regulated by our government, so that they can't be too obscene or too, again, how Wendy-O made it, I don't know. But the import cover on that one had a girl, probably 10 or 12 years old, in the nude, and, I can't even say what it was, but...
Where are they coming from?
They're from England.
From England?
Yes. And it showed the young lady being violated, a 12-year-old little girl. It verged on kiddie porn, actually, but it didn't pass the censors here, so the name did, Virgin Killer, but this is the group.
Jesus have mercy.
Now, Alice Cooper, he's an interesting person.
He?
Yeah, Alice is a guy.
I'm learning tonight, folks.
And this one is called Welcome to My Nightmare. And he gets into in fact, I've got some lyrics of his that I'll read for you a little later. It's really gross. Let's go on. And this one, Alice Cooper Simply Goes to Hell. It's the name of that one. Very graphically portrayed. Some interesting songs. Let's go on. This is AC/DC. And I've got some lyrics of theirs that I'll read for you a little later. The name of this album is Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap.
What are they trying to say with the
I don't know.
eyes blanked out on the people?
I don't know. Again, there's another AC/DC album, Highway to Hell. Again, you've got the Satanic Lightning Bolt in the middle. And some of the songs here, Highway to Hell, and If You Want Blood, Night Prowler. In fact, this was one of the last albums that Bon Scott recorded, the song Highway to Hell. And he was the leader of AC/DC, and after he recorded this, he was found the next day out parked in his car on a highway, and he had drunk himself to death after recording that, Highway to Hell, AC/DC.
Jesus.
Now this one is really gross. AC/DC, If You Want Blood, and you turn off to the back of the album, you've got it. And it shows a man being impaled by a guitar. And get some of the names on here. Rock and Roll Damnation and Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be is another song on this album by AC/DC. In fact, I've got some lyrics by AC/DC that I'll lay on you a little later. Blue Oyster Cult very graphically portrays what they're into in a lot of their covers. Now there's a symbol in the middle of this album here, and I asked Walter Martin what that was, and he said in Roman times they used that as the symbol of confusion, because right side up it looks like a cross with a hook at the bottom, but you turn it upside down and it forms a question mark. And he said that was used as the sign of confusion because it was questioning who died on the cross, or did Jesus die on the cross. That's the reason they use that. The Romans originated that symbol. Let's go on. Blue Oyster Cult, Agents of Fortune. And again, in the man's left hand, you've got the tarot cards. In his right hand, he's pointing to the symbol again, down at the bottom. Now, what's scary about that, in fact, my wife was with me. We were at a South Coast Village, actually, just kind of shopping around. We went into one of these game places where they sell games, and, you know, one of these places, and was kind of skimming across some of these games, ran up on the tarot cards, and on the end they had Walt Disney tarot cards, endorsed by Walt Disney Productions, and it had Mickey Mouse on the cover and Minnie Mouse with, it said, tarot cards for children, Walt Disney Productions.
You're kidding.
No, it really, and I saw that with my own two eyes.
That
and
really shocks me and disappoints me.
Yeah, it does.
Frank, to tell you.
And so let's go on. This one, another Blue Oyster Cult album. Some Enchanted Evening shows a death riding on a black horse or a skull, but on the bridle of the horse there, you've got that same symbol, the symbol of confusion. Let's go on. Another one by Blue Oyster Cult. Now this one is loaded with symbols. They're dressed in the typical garb that high priests wear, Church of Satan. There you have Neptune's fork embedded in that girl's forehead. There you have the scarab embedded in their forehead.
And the Pyramid of Egypt.
And the Pyramid of Egypt. Again, all into Egyptology. And again, you've got that same symbol of confusion on one of their clothes. Let's go on. Now this man is interesting. His name, and we're going to talk about him a little later, his name is Aleister Crowley. In fact, I've got a book of his right now that we're going to talk about. But this man called himself the Beast, and his house he called the house the Beast lived in. And I've got one of his books, and I was kind of reading it, and he is so into Satan worship and promoting Satanism. In fact, I looked him up in an encyclopedia, and they almost kind of quoted him as being a satanic evangelist because he tried to make Satanism okay, you know, or something, an alternate to Christianity. Well, let's go to one of the Beatles albums, and there's the outside of it. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is the name of this one. But look up in the upper left-hand corner. You've got Aleister Crowley.
There he is.
As one of the people on that Beatles album there.
They left the 666 on.
Yeah. Well, that 666 was out of a publication where they said, well, he called himself the Beast, so they put that there.
Aleister Crowley will lead us on into the backward masking aspect here in just a little bit.
Right. He gives us some clues. And I've got some lyrics by an artist talking about Mr. Crowley. So let's go on. We're almost through these albums. Here's one by Ozzy Osbourne, Blizzard of Oz. Look in his right hand there. You've got a cross, Christian cross in his right hand.
Yeah.
And I've got some lyrics by him a little later. Let's go on. Ozzy Osbourne again. Diary of a Madman is the name of this one. And look over his right shoulder there. You have the inverted cross, which is a sign of Satanism. You've got a little boy there looking in a book of spells is what that book is, kind of looking very evil and laughing. And then on the back of the album you have a man slumped over the table dead. Ozzy Osbourne. In fact, I've got an article on Ozzy Osbourne, and this is, if you've got a queasy stomach, you probably ought to tune off. It says, Ozzy bites off more than he can chew. This came out of a rock and roll magazine. It says, Ozzy Osbourne was appalled. I read in the paper the other day that some band called itself the Dead Lennons. And there's, several bands out. One band, the Dead Kennedys, and some of these punk bands are getting into this death trip. They'll have the Wounded Reagans next week. It's sick, and this is Ozzy Osbourne speaking. And when it comes,
they're putting me on now here a little bit.
Well, the Dead Lennons is a group, and then and then he says, that's the whole thing. He's appalled at some of these names that are coming out. They'll have the Wounded Reagans next week. It's sick, and when it comes to sick, Ozzy knows his stuff. Just ask the folks at CBS, where in the midst of a marketing meeting, Osbourne plucked a dove from his pocket and, in his words, chewed its blinking head off and spat the remains on the table. His explanation was, I guess I was tremendously jet-lagged. Ozzy Osbourne.
In front of network executives, he did this at a promotional meeting?
Right. And he was appalled at some of the names of some of these groups coming out, and there he bites the head off of a dove or some bird. Let's go on. This one, very apparent by their name, Black Sabbath. And you've got a lady on the cover there dressed just like a witch. In fact, she's green even. And by Black Sabbath. In fact, I've got some words by Black Sabbath. This one's very apparent what they're saying. Black Sabbath, we sold our souls for rock and roll. And again, you've got instead of the S, you've got the lightning bolt used for the S. This is the inside of the album there, and it shows a lady laying in a casket, half dead, but she's holding a cross in her hands there. Why? I don't know. Now this is another Black Sabbath album. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath is the name of this, and this is actually the back of the album. And it shows a man laying there in bed, obviously very sick. His loved ones are with him. And you see the outline of a man above him with his hands outstretched above this man. But you go to the other side and you get a whole different story. Here's the cover of it, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. And some of the close-ups are incredible. The man has obviously died. You've got a serpent strangling the man around his neck. All of his friends have obviously turned to demons with the horns and the fingernails. And in the headboard, you've got the skull and 666 in the headboard by Black Sabbath. In fact, I've got some words by them a little later that are incredible. This is their newest album by Black Sabbath, Mob Rules. And you've got, again, one of the inserts, a Christian cross hanging next to that vesture. And the vesture itself has a face on it. Very apparent. You see the horns and the eyes and the mouth of a demonic-looking person. In fact, somebody even drew a parallel to it. I didn't. That it even almost looks like the Shroud of Turin, if you've ever seen that. Where it's hanging there with...
Satan has a counterfeit for everything, or tries to have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on. This one, Hotel California, by the Eagles, very popular song. And the words themselves on Hotel California suggest all kind of things. But you've got the inside of the album itself, and you've got the band members standing there with friends and relatives, I would assume, standing inside the lobby of this hotel. But you see 3 arched windows up in the upper left-hand corner there. Well, you zoom into a close-up of that, and you've got a man's face up there. And you can see the eyes and nose and mouth of a man. Now, why? My question is not, this is just the evidence. I'm not drawing a conclusion as to who that is, but why would they put somebody up there? Why would they try to hide it? Because it is very cleverly disguised, I feel. Let's go on. Now, this one is incredible. This is Led Zeppelin Presence. And I'm going to talk about Led Zeppelin a little later, but you've got a husband, wife, and 2 kids sitting at a table with a funny object sitting in the middle of it. Well, you can see a close-up of this object here. And I looked that up. That is a satanic monolith. And it's used in seances. This is another form of divination where they'll put this in the center of a table and stare at it and try to call up demon spirits with it. That's what it's used for. And on the inside of the album, you've got all these pictures with the monolith airbrushed in it. some young kids playing records, and it's in her hand. There's a doctor and a baby.
Jesus have mercy.
Playing with it. But that's the worst is yet to come. There you've got a school teacher with her left hand on the monolith and her right hand on the young kid's head. And that's the exact position taken for somebody who wants to become demon-possessed. You go to a medium, and that's what they do if that's what you're seeking. Very graphically portrayed on Led Zeppelin's album. Let's go on. Now this one, and I'll tell you what, let's hold that one if you want to break now. There's some subliminal words on this album. I'll just kind of give you a teaser. So just hold on, the best is yet to come.
The worst is yet to come, I think.
Paper, for the record, says Rocky Erickson is being taken seriously. Mr. Crowley, and how it was on the Beatles album.
Now, who was he again?
He was the Satanist that was kind of, he called himself the Beast. And he was almost like what the encyclopedia called him, was a satanic evangelist almost.
And he lived
over in England. He died I believe in the 40s. But Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin lives in his house right now. There you see a picture of him. That was taken out of a publication. That's Aleister Crowley. He's published many books on the occult. And
you have one of his books here tonight.
I have one of his books, and I'll show you, and what some of the things he has to say. Well, Ozzy Osbourne wrote a song about Mr. Crowley, and here's what he said. He said, Mr. Crowley, what went on in your head? Mr. Crowley, did you talk with the dead? Your lifestyle to me seems so tragic with the thrill of it all. You fooled all the people with magic. You waited on Satan's call. Aleister Crowley. And again, Ozzy Osbourne, you could go on for a while on. That's part of it. Some more lyrics. Alice Cooper. We talked about Alice Cooper, who's a guy. And he has a song here about Cold Ethel. And this is what this has to say. Again, really gross. One thing I miss is Cold Ethel and her skeleton kiss. We met last night making love by the refrigerator light. Ethel, Ethel, let me squeeze you in my arms. Ethel, Ethel, come and freeze me with your charms. One thing, no lie, Ethel's frigid as an Eskimo pie. She's cool in bed, she ought to be, 'cause Ethel's dead.
Oh, now, come on. That's honest-to-goodness lyrics from
Alice Cooper. And, to me, that's...
is garbage.